One of the big games in Week 15 was the Dallas Cowboys facing the LA Rams in Jerry World. And the LA Rams found out that the Dallas Cowboys could be that team this year that makes a run that isn't really supposed to be able to make a run. The Dallas Cowboys are a scary team for any playoff team in the NFC. They are the team that the entire NFC does not want to see in the playoffs. They would much rather see Philadelphia. I'm guaranteeing you that they are praying that they do not see the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys play the Eagles this weekend, Week 16, in Philadelphia. Huge game in the NFC East. It's going to decide who is going to move on to the playoffs. And if the Cowboys win that game, they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be the 4th seed, and they are going to host a playoff game. We saw what the Cowboys at full potential are capable of versus the LA Rams this past Sunday. And I'm telling you that no NFC team wants to see that version of the Cowboys. Because we've seen 6 seeds, wild card teams, even division winners that were the 4 seed at 9-7. We even saw it with the Seahawks, 7-9, that they can knock off a team or two and make a run within the NFC, the AFC, in the playoffs in general. We've seen it with the Giants, with multiple Super Bowls. We've seen it recently with the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East. Commonly it happens in the NFC East, which is kind of odd. Then you look at like the Ravens and the Steelers. What is the trend with all of those teams that the Cowboys also follow? All of these teams were extremely talented teams that were underperforming in an area or two. They figure out that area of their game, and then they fix it or they adapt, and they become rather champions, or they make a run and they make it dangerous for the rest of the conference in the playoffs. Now, I know you're going to say, hey, Mitch, the Cowboys, they suck. They've lost a bunch of games to good teams, and they've only beaten bad teams. They just beat the Rams, so that's a good team in my opinion. Yes, they're 1-6 in games versus winning teams, but I do not really take that without looking at the context for those losses. So they lost to the Patriots 13-9 in New England in a rainstorm. First off, the Cowboys played just as well as the Patriots in that game. I was at the game. They could have won that game. The Cowboys are not used to those type of elements. The Patriots are. It was on the road in one of the most hostile environments in the NFL. Not an easy place to win. And if the Cowboys don't fumble or make better coaching decisions in that game, they have a better opportunity to win that game. Honestly. The Saints, they lost by 2 to the Saints. Yes, that was Teddy Bridgewater's first game. I understand that. But the Cowboys could have easily won that game. Then you go to the Vikings game. They lost by 4, could have easily won that game. Last play of the game, the out route to Ezekiel Elliott. I disagreed with that call. Again, just looking at this trend, the only game that they lost to a winning team that was by more than 1 score was to the Packers, and they made a comeback, a surging comeback in the second half, but fell short. And they've really not had the Packers number. Like, if any team wants to play the Cowboys in the NFC, it's the Packers. So maybe there's one team that would like to play the Cowboys, but every other NFC team, I promise you, does not want to see the Cowboys. So if they're 1-6 versus winning teams, why do you think the Cowboys are such a threat? Well, the Cowboys are immensely talented. The Cowboys are arguably the most talented roster in the entire NFL. That is why they have such great potential. When they're rolling, they're difficult to stop. I mean, the Cowboys are also an immensely talented roster that has had a few crucial errors, which has cost them a lot of games. Like I brought up coaching decisions. Jason Garrett is not the greatest coach. And I do not believe that all the coaching errors or flaws will go away just by simply one win over the Rams. I'm not trying to say that. I don't think that's going to happen. I just think it can't get any worse in a lot of these areas. I don't think you can have worse coaching than they've been given or had. I don't think you can have worse kicking in big spots than the Cowboys have had this season. They signed a new kicker, Kai Forbath. Looked pretty good versus the Rams. Overall, has experience in those indoors type of environments that the Cowboys are used to, especially in Jerry World. So he should be better in that regard. More accurate kicker than Maher, but not as big of a leg. And I do think that's a slight improvement there with Forbath. So just a little bit marginally better in kicking, and you'll improve. One field goal could be the difference in the game, right? Then you look at special teams. Special teams have been awful for the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys arguably have the worst special teams in the league. Not just kicking field goals, but starting position for the offense and the defense. The Dallas Cowboys offense is first in the NFL in yards. And they have the worst starting position in the entire NFL. You can't get any worse than that. 32nd, they start with the football. So if they have any better returning, punting, anything, they are going to benefit from that. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, they're 25th on that side of things. So you can't get any worse than what they've been on special teams. You can only get better. You can only improve in those areas, in my opinion. There have been crucial errors that they've made in games, like versus the Jets, not picking up a simple Greg Williams blitz that you knew was coming. Better prepare for those things. Better prepare for the details, which is what they did versus the Rams. Have a chip on your shoulder a little bit, which is what they had versus the Rams. And then you help your talent because, okay, we're gaining more confidence from victories. Great players with confidence are unstoppable. Second, you gain momentum as a football team. You become closer as a football team. Backs against the wall as a football team. That's when you see teams play their best football because they're playing for each other instead of just playing as individual talents, which maybe at times the Cowboys have been playing in that way. It's just finding the right solution to the problem. And the Dallas Cowboys, with the talent they have, and you gain the momentum, gain the confidence, the backs against the wall, the underdog Philadelphia Eagle approach that maybe Michael Bennett can bring to the team just a little bit, and you have something that could be very scary for a lot of teams because the underdog is a team that you have to fear because they have nothing to lose. If the Cowboys, which they've never been the underdog, even in the years where they weren't considered the favorite, but because they're the Cowboys, they were considered one of the favorites. At this point, because they're 7-7, and if they get in the playoffs, let's say at 9-7, nobody's going to think they're going to beat the Seahawks in the wild card round or the Niners in the wild card round. Nobody's going to expect them, even if they win that game, to go into New Orleans or go into Green Bay, whatever it may be, whatever the problem or the place is or the team is. Nobody's going to expect that to happen. So playing from a mind of the wild card, playing from a mind of the underdog is dangerous. Is a very dangerous thing. In the same way that my Patriots teams have taken these weird stories of Deflategate and Spygate and the cheating scandals and last season you're not good anymore and all that sort of stuff and putting it into the motivation, the Cowboys can use people saying they suck and they're no good and Jason Garrett getting fired and all this news and all this drama and Dak Prescott going against his haters and using it as motivation. With a team that's this talented, that's all they need to give them a spark. And I think we saw that versus the Rams, that the Cowboys are a very dangerous team when they put their mind to it. Not only are they talented, when you look at every single position, I mean, Dak Prescott, he's a top 10 quarterback in my mind this season. And if they were a better team, if they were a winning team with, let's say, 10 to 12 wins, I think he'd be in the MVP conversation because he's been that good at times. Their running back position, Ezekiel Elliott, is one of the best backs in the game and hasn't really shown it as much this year in terms of the burst and the big play ability. But last game was maybe his best game of the year. And if he can get a spark of momentum as well, then you're talking about a Zeke that we know can be the best running back in football. Their wide receiver duo, Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, there's not many duos out there better than that duo. There are two 1,000-yard receivers, or at least Michael Gallup will be. Amari Cooper is a top 5 guy in the game, in my opinion, thanks to his speed, route running, and separation abilities. Those two are dangerous on the outside. Jason Witten knows what it takes at tight end and is playing pretty well, honestly. Their offense is really, really loaded, and their offense gives a lot of teams a lot of issues because they can pass the ball, they can run the ball, they have an extraordinarily good offensive line that's still playing very, very well, and it's mostly healthy. This is a dangerous team, and we saw that offensive line's able to road grade teams. They dominated the game versus the Rams. It was a huge reason why they were able to come out on top in that game. You flip it to the defensive side of the ball, and the defense has been underwhelming this year, but they have playmakers at every level, whether it's DeMarcus Lawrence off the edge, even Robert Quinn to a certain degree who's playing well, Michael Bennett with the playoff experience. Then you go to linebacker with Jalen Smith. Van Der Esch is coming back. Sean Lee had a big game versus the Rams. The secondary, Byron Jones, can be a shutdown type corner. This defense is playing at the rock bottom of its talent. I think that's the common theme with the Cowboys. They can't get any worse in a lot of these categories because their talent won't allow them to get any worse. They can only get better. They can only get better. And that scares teams. The Eagles won't scare anyone. They have no big play threats on offense. They don't have, outside of Carson Wentz, Zach Ertz, and maybe Doug Peterson as a coach scares you a little bit. They don't have much. I mean, Fletcher Cox is a beast, but their defense, their secondary can be taken advantage of. Their offense is not explosive. The Cowboys have all the threat in the world because of their talent. And you look at the statistics, which had me scratching my head. This makes no sense. The way that the Cowboys perform in terms of their stats does not lead to a 7-7 football team. Like, look at their stats. You could compare them to any team in the NFC, and you could argue that just looking at stats, the Cowboys are a better team. Okay, so looking at this, they're really, really good on third down, which is huge in the playoffs. They're first on offense on third down. They're fourth on defense on third down. And I think that's thanks to their pass rush on defense and some of their secondary guys and some of what they do in coverage. But then their offense, I think it's thanks to their pass protection and Dak Prescott being able to extend plays and Amari Cooper and Jason Witten and these guys on third down. And then if it's third and short, you can just run it with Zeke or you can run it with Dak on a keeper. So they're a dynamic offense on third down. They're a dynamic defense on third down. They have no statistic, whether it's passing, rushing, points, yards, doesn't matter. No main statistic where they are below 12th best in the league. And I don't think you could say that for any playoff team. Even the Ravens, you can't say that about the 49ers. They have the best stats. You look at this. It's incredible. They're first in yards, second in passing, sixth in rushing, fifth in points on offense. There's maybe no offense that's that balanced in the league. 7th in yards, 8th in passing, 12th in rushing, 12th in points on defense. Nothing spectacular, but nothing stands out as being bad or poor. And like I said, that's playing at rock bottom of their talent level. They can reach their potentially in the playoffs if they're given the opportunity and they're playing with that chip on their shoulder. And they're first in first downs on offense, and they're first in yards per attempt passing. Big plays down the field. This is a dynamic team. This is a difficult team, and no team in the NFC wants to see them. I mean, what team in the NFC overwhelms the Cowboys? None. Based on talent, none. I mean, you could go down the list. They're more talented than the Hawks. They're more talented than the Packers. They're more talented than the Saints, I think. They're more talented than... I think it's debatable between the Vikings and the 49ers from pure talent alone. Nothing else in the conversation, just talent for individual players. The Cowboys are right there with the Niners. The Cowboys are right there with the Vikings. And if you want to throw the Saints in there, you can as well. So the Cowboys are in that conversation. I mean, they beat the Seahawks in the playoffs last year, and that was at home as well. So we know how that may go, and we know that the Hawks don't blow anyone out. They haven't beat anybody by more than 6 points, I don't think, this year. So the Hawks will keep you in the game, and that's what the Cowboys need, especially at home. That gives them even more of a benefit there. They only lost to Minnesota by 4 points, and in a rematch, we could see the Cowboys come out on top. They only lost by 2 to New Orleans with Teddy Bridgewater instead of Drew Brees, so it's a little bit different. That game would be in New Orleans, but again, they beat them last year in the regular season. They were the team that showed the weaknesses of the Saints, and that defense for the Cowboys seems to play very well versus the Saints offense and seems to match up very well. So that's fascinating. That's a fascinating matchup. I don't think they'd be overwhelmed by the Niners because they have the offensive line to protect versus that great pass rush. And then once you expose the secondary, Amari Cooper would be difficult. Gallup would be difficult. Yes, Kyle Shanahan would give that defense a little bit of an issues from a scheme perspective, but it's not like they don't have the speed to track down George Kittle or to cover the guys that they can cover, right? So it's just like no team would outright destroy the Cowboys in the playoffs. No team is overwhelming to the Cowboys, and no team in the NFC wants to see the Cowboys. I think it's not even a conversation. When you're talking about the more dangerous team that could potentially come out of the NFC East, it's definitely the Dallas Cowboys. And I would say the Dallas Cowboys are as big of a dark horse as any team in either conference because, like I said, these stats don't match the production. They're playing at rock bottom when they could be playing at ceiling. They're getting Van Der Esch back. If they have a chip on their shoulder, if they get the momentum, if they get the confidence, this is a team that will be very scary for anyone to play in the 2020 playoffs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Gronk spike the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's Mitch of TheBottomLineView. Thanks for watching, and peace out.